This is the voices of Zoltaba, and this is the first episode of this new podcast. I'm your host, Anish, and it's good to be here. I'm very excited for this new podcast. It is something I've been thinking of for quite a bit, and having recently turned 25, it seemed like a great point to mark the point in which I can rent a car by also starting a new podcast. And I think people will like this. I think you guys listening now will find it useful, helpful, and hopefully engaging. And we're gonna see how this kind of all pans out and turns out. We're basically gonna have other than this, right? 3 segments. One just for Zoltaba news. We'll call it Z news. Just things that are happening around Zoltaba that you might want to be aware of. Just a quick rundown of things. The second segment of every episode is going to be a classic guest interview where we'll bring on at least one guest to talk about their life, what's going on with them, kind of what makes them go, what makes them get up in the morning, what makes them want to pursue things, and what it is they want to pursue, right? And I think being able to talk to these people, it's gonna be really nice. I think I'm gonna have a lot of fun doing it, and hopefully you guys will have fun listening, and hopefully we'll get to see and hear a lot of different perspectives around the Zoltaba community, and I'm excited, and I hope you guys are. We'll jump right into it. Here is the Z News. First things first, Dynasty FBL, Fantasy Basketball League, league meetings. So this is our Fantasy Basketball League, our only one for basketball, a Dynasty League. We're having league meetings right now, so it is the off season. We're trying to figure out what the rule changes might be. So obviously the commissioners are all talking, and the league is talking, and we're going to figure out what the vote comes out to. So it should be exciting. We're in year 3 of this. We're coming up to year 3 of this league, and it's going strong. It should be interesting to see what the league meetings bring us in terms of what people decide they want to see for that league. Additionally, baseball fantasy. So we have our first year, the launch of our fantasy baseball league. We only have one right now, but depending on how this season goes, we might launch a few others. So keep that in mind. If you're ever interested in baseball fantasy, hit us up, and we'll get you going on that. Also, Catan, Robbers of Catan or Tourney finals for the elite circuit. We have finished. I guess this should be our 4th tourney in the circuits, and we are approaching towards the back half of the circuit itself, where we figure out our final player pool for the ROC Elite season, and we're going to see who takes home the crown for the finals. We have 2 directors, Gene and Albert, taking on Caleb in the finals, so it should be an exciting one coming up on YouTube. And after that, obviously the wild card tourney, the 1v1s are coming up, so that'll be very fun to see this new game format for Catan, kind of see how things shake out. It'll be a World Cup style tourney, so group play and then a final bracket. So that'll be very, very cool as well. It is the off season, so no pools or anything like that yet. But keep in mind, NFL Survivor Pool is going to come up again, and we're very excited. And keep that in mind. Keep on the lookout for that, and we'll follow up on that soon. With that, that's everything for the Z News. Our first guest for this podcast is none other than Alex Frumkin, my fellow co-founder of Zoltaba. We're just going to talk about where things started, how we met, even, and where things are at right now with Zoltaba, and more importantly, with him and his life. And I think it'll be really cool to sit down and talk to him and see what's been going on and what the future might hold. And I think it'll be a very insightful interview, and I hope you guys enjoy. So, coming up, Alex Frumkin.
I mean, we've known each other for I don't know how long now. But like first time we met was where? The Bolt? Was it the Bolt? It
No,
was
first
before
time was
that.
not the.
It was
It was
before that.
definitely before that, dude. The first time we met was most likely in Blackwell
Yeah, you're right. It was Blackwell. So freshman year. You lived in Blackwell, right?
for like a month or two.
What do you mean for a month or two?
I left, ran. Okay, so Blackwell was. I lived in 3 dorms freshman year.
What? I didn't know. Did I know that?
I figured. I thought you did.
I mean, I might have, but I probably forgot. But yeah.
That seems like the most likely case. I was originally in Randolph, and then had
Okay.
some roommate stuff happen,
Mm-hmm.
and we split. And I left, and then I went to Blackwell mid first semester, well, not mid, kind of like really around Thanksgiving time almost. And then they said that we're not sure that you can stay here full time for the freshman year. And I was like, well, I certainly hope so. I was in a dingle, but I wouldn't have been too surprised if they wouldn't let me stay there. And
Mm-hmm.
then, sure enough, next semester comes around. They're like, sorry, we need to kick you out, and we need to put 2 people in that room. So I got shipped off to Bassett,
That's
and I
right. You were in
finished freshman
Bassett.
year in Bassett.
Yeah, I remember you in Bassett the most. I think that's what it is. Bassett was the OG, like for real, for real. I don't know if I told you. I probably told you this. Maybe you forgot as well. We'll see. But first dorm I ever lived in on Duke's campus was Bassett, and it was during my Duke Tip summer studies program. It was like my second year in the program.
I mean,
First years didn't get to live on
the way
campus.
you were framing it, I was near certain it was Duke Tips. Technically, it was my first dorm as well, as a PFrosh coming in, and I spent one
Yeah,
night in Bassett.
nice. Yeah, Bassett was. It was such a dump. I mean, it. Yeah. I mean, yeah. It was a dump. Even when I first lived there, it was
Yeah.
a dump freshman year. It's still a dump now, I bet. But
Do you
it was the
that I,
OG,
what
100%.
I forget the new Trinity dorms are just simply unfair.
Yeah. Well, at the time, right? GA was the door to be in, a hundred
I
percent, with
guess. I
a hundred
guess.
percent, 100%, without a doubt. I mean, everyone would just come to Gadoo in the backyard, and then even like people who are on the main quad, like those dorms just weren't as good as any
You
dorms
did
in the
you live in
backyard.
GA? Where did you live again? Did you live in Blackwell or
Yeah,
did you live
GA,
in GA? Okay.
GA, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Second floor, I think. I don't know,
Okay.
something like that. Um,
Man doesn't
but yeah,
remember
that's how
his
I like met
location
Jay
for
and
a
stuff.
formative year of his life, but okay.
Yeah. I mean, GA was a very formative experience overall. That whole year was crazy. That whole year was crazy. I
Mm.
mean, we would play poker all the time in Gadoo, remember? That was like one
I
of the
don't. I
things.
mean, I played like maybe a few times with you
Yeah, you didn't play
freshman
it
year.
often, but you knew that we played, You knew that there was a group there.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay.
But
So
yeah,
I
then
guess we
we
met a
mostly
while
started.
ago.
We did meet a while ago, but we mostly started hanging out sophomore year. Like definitely a lot more seriously sophomore year. But yeah, we knew each other
Okay.
freshman year.
Okay. And what, like sophomore year? Yeah, because sophomore year, that's when we first did fantasy, right?
That was when I first joined fantasy.
Yeah.
Um, I think it was maybe a conversation at it was either at the Bolt or Pitchforks where this was ignited,
Mm-hmm.
and then yeah, fantasy, and then just naturally became about more than fantasy.
Yeah. I mean, we spent hours at the Bolt too, though, to be fair. That's what I
Yes, we
remember the most.
spent.
I mean, obviously,
That's
like,
certainly in terms of pure time spent, it was definitely the most of Ben.
Yeah, because I still remember we did association, and I was the Lakers, and I had the better start. I'm not gonna lie, I did have the better start, right? But you were the Bulls,
Yeah.
and then
Mhm.
I think we met in the finals, and then we like played out. Like, we automated a few games of the series, but then it came to like it was like I was up 3-2 against you. Then we played out the last two games because you
Mhm.
won the first one and then I won the next one. And then I like got the chip over you, and I still remember that moment. It was beautiful. It was so because other people were watching too. And I don't remember what they were saying, but I remember we had an audience for that one a little bit.
Don't make it like we were like a crowd generating event. Yeah, there were like a few people there, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I get, but I mean, that's the closest I'm ever gonna
Guys,
get to something like
come to
that.
the Bolt. It's Alex and Anish. It's going crazy, bro.
Game seven, Lakers
Game
Bulls.
7.
It's all come down to this. And then you made the finals
Bosh
again,
gets the
and I think you
rebound,
won.
kicks it out to Allen. 3, sending it to overtime.
It was hype. It was hype. Actually, Game Seven ended up being a blowout. I'm pretty sure.
It was not.
So,
I don't remember the full contents of that game.
well,
But
I
yeah,
do. Don't worry.
congrats. Congrats to
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. Now it's all recorded, so it's all documented, and that's the beauty
Yeah,
of
that's
this
the official
podcast.
narrative.
Yep.
I truly don't even remember any of the specifics of the
Yeah.
2K times, but I'm okay with letting you have that one, like because I'm the bigger
Beautiful.
person, you know. Like I'm just a kinder, more understanding human being. So I
Of
understand that your
course.
ego rides heavily on this truth.
It's because it's okay. To be fair, it is because you are the better 2K player. So every little
Mm.
win counts 100%, and I don't forget those. But yeah, I mean, obviously, it became. I mean, we did fantasy for a while though. Like that league went on for a bit, and then I don't think like much happened. I think like I started that podcast during COVID, and then it kind of fizzled out. And then we started a couple podcasts as well, right? We started like the shot, and then random other ones.
Oh man, the shots. Remember all 5 of us just
Yeah, that was
like it
crazy.
was awful.
Yeah, it was
But
awful. Like,
I the only source of pride I get from that is me saying on record that Desmond Bain was the seal of the draft at the 30th pick. And I was right. And I was absolutely right that Desmond Bain was the seal of the draft.
well, I don't remember that, so I guess
It's
I'll let you
literally
have it because I'm the bigger person.
I can literally check my I one time he never responded, but I straight up emailed Zach Kleiman once, who's the GM of the
Hmm.
Grizzlies, and I like included that soundbite.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah,
Should have
I
hired me.
have. He should have, but his loss, I guess. Just
Drinks from an
youngest ever
empty cup.
executive of the year. I thought there was something in there, bro. What can I say? I get thirsty when I'm around you.
Oh, and see, this is why we've lasted as long as we have. There's no other way to do it. If you're not
I
flirting, then
mean,
it's not a real relationship.
it's just a lot of fun. It's just a good time hanging out, which is why we spend so much time together.
Yeah, yeah, and that's why this thing. I mean, yeah. So we started Hitch Route. That was the main one, right? We actually did a full season of football, like a full football
We have full
season's worth of
season.
content.
We did like 2. Well, you and I did the season, and then
Yeah,
I continued with Rob
you did,
too.
you did, you did. But I will say those episodes did not come out as often. We like when we first did it, like we were doing it every single week. Like that was a crazy
All
project on its
right,
own.
you're right.
Yeah. So, but you know, we got to see if we can start that back up. We'll see. We'll see how things go. But yeah. So that was that, and then we kind of just took a break for a bit, and I don't know. I think we started the pool. You came up with the survivor pool, right? That's how things work.
I do believe I came up with the survivor pool. Yes.
Yeah, it was just like one random night. I was just like at your apartment, and then we just like recorded some shit too. I remember. Oh no, we had to record, and then you came up with that idea, and then we were like, "What the hell would it take?" and all that shit.
Yeah.
That's to me. That's when like Zoltaba really like happened. Like that's like when it was incepted. Is with that pool. I don't know if we came up with the name yet, but maybe you did. I don't know. And you know what? Now we got to get on the record. What like since people might ask in the future, let's document it right now. Why did you come up with the name Zoltaba, or how did you come up with it? What does it mean? Doesn't mean anything. You know. What do you think?
Yeah. So I'm gonna try pulling up. I think I wrote it somewhere. I literally have it on Discord. I was talking, so I wrote this down like 4 months ago with this guy Dylan, he just joined our Dynasty Basketball League, and he has done a Survivor pool or two. He asked he asked where the name came from. So
That's Dylan Jacobs, right?
Dylan Jacobs, yeah.
Shout
So
out.
the shout out Dylan Zumar, not the other Dylan Zumar, who's also been an OG. Shout out to him as well.
Mm-hmm.
The name was something I randomly thought of one day. Anish was telling me about a name he was thinking of. He wanted to have some kind of meaning, but still sound exotic. So you had Fizonder at the time because
Yeah, you're right.
you were taking Portuguese, my dude.
I was, yeah,
And
that was crazy. Hey, shout out to Dylan Zumar for pointing me out to taking Portuguese, and shout out Magda for being awesome and amazing. And yeah, that's it. But go ahead.
nice, lots of shout outs today. But
Yep,
yeah, so
yep.
I was kind of just going for random combinations of syllables, and then Zoltaba just crossed my mind at some point. It just felt right. I liked how it went from Z to A, so we cover everything. Just like how Amazon has an A to Z arrow in their logo. And then
Yeah,
also Zolt sounded like Bolt, which I honestly wasn't even thinking about the Bolt really when I was thinking of it, but I just more that it like has the electric quality, so it's like cool, edgy, and also I mean it just sounded good and had a few like underlying reasons to I could like point to afterwards. It's like, huh.
yeah. And I guess the number one, at least for us, number one pro for us is that it's a name that like no one thought of before, or like registered anywhere. So
Right, that's
we
the
were able to
point.
get the IG handle. We were able to get the branding. We were able to get. I think we have a domain now. So yeah, I mean, all that stuff was obviously a huge plus. So when we make it big, right, it all stems
Mm,
from that moment. So
indeed.
so
Indeed.
yeah, I mean, we basically just did a bunch of fantasy stuff, bunch of pool stuff. And I don't know, it just kind of became like a slow growth, and people were into the pools, especially the survivor pool,
People are
which is
definitely into the
huge.
pools.
Yeah.
And people
So
are hugely into the quality of just how things are run and the communication. So like Rob's email, shout out to Rob Palmisano, is obviously like one of people's like highlights, like that he goes to such level of detail, and it's like straight up. I've heard people tell us, "I don't want to be part of the pool anymore, but can I please get those emails from Rob?"
that's sick. That's so sick. Yeah, I mean, his emails were iconic, or still iconic. I can't wait for what this season brings. Everyone loves those threads, and there's a lot of effort that goes into everything, right? And I think that shows up, and I think that's why hopefully people appreciate it and come back. So it's good to see that. It's good to see that growth for sure. But yeah, that was basically like everything that kind of I guess led us to where we are now. And I don't really know where we are now. Honestly, it's not super defining, but that's why I was interested in creating this podcast, right? Because I want to be able to over time, maybe even every month, just like come together and like see where things are at with Zoltaba and with the people in it. So like, Alex, I know you're obviously busy with stuff, but like, what are you up to right now? What are you up to these days?
What am I up to these days? Okay, so up to a few things. I, for one, I've been running a nonprofit for a while where we build web extensions for people with disabilities called Accessibility Shocks. And my co-founder has since gotten a job at Amazon. So it's like I've been holding it up on my own mostly, but I'm kind of ready to move on to. So I've been looking for jobs, and that's just, I mean, it's a tough market, but I'm okay. Worst comes to worst, but I'm definitely I'm tutoring a decent amount, and that keeps things in check. And I just love helping students learn. I love seeing those moments where they connect the dots with lessons and such. And I'm also working on the LSAT to apply to law school.
Okay. So 3 big things actually then. So let's okay, so shout out how would you spell that if someone were to try to look it up and
So
install it?
sure, it's like the word accessibility, and then you put 2 P's before the C's for like app. So app accessibility.
Sure. Okay, great. What does the extension do?
Well, there's 5 different extensions, but like the main
Okay.
one is probably keys for Safari. So it's like a really good keyboard navigator. So it's specifically intended for people with like fine motor skill disabilities, but of course anyone who's just good at using their keyboard, even like overall level is decent, could be using the extension just because it works faster for like people who know where things are than like actually going to your trackpad and clicking. The way the algorithm works, it generates 2 to 3 letter keys for what you would need to type to click anything on your screen. And I think most people could probably get off 2 to 3 keys faster than moving your hand to your trackpad.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, so basically it's about like being able to make computer functions accessible, right, to like any type of person, right? Okay, perfect. That's really cool. I'm glad that like you because you've been doing that for a bit now, right? Like the
Yeah,
nonprofit stuff.
I
Yeah.
started that. I started that at the end of like when I was near the end of college.
Yeah. So it's been a few years there. So that's good. I mean, keeping committed to something is like, I mean, we know, right? Like even from Zoltava, it's like hard, right? Like it's not,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to be consistent. It's hard to like, you know, maintain anything. It takes effort. So that's respectable. And you're trying to, yeah, you're also tutoring, which is awesome. I used to tutor a little bit like for CS, like software stuff. Um, I don't know how good I was, right? But like they were kids, so they didn't know any better. So it was like fine, like I just tell them something and they believe it. So it's kind of a win-win in that way. But it's cool that you're tutoring. Like, what do you tutor students in? Like, what do you help them out with?
I help in. I can generally cover the academic like gambit, like whatever is needed. I mostly tutor high schoolers and some middle schoolers. I would say the majority, well, more than the majority of my work is math, probably just because I think a lot of students don't really get a grip on math, especially once it gets to higher levels in high school. And so I do a lot of math, but I also do reading. And I've done a bit of science and occasionally history, civics. The other big one, though, is test prep, so SAT, ACT test prep. And I've even prepared students for the GRE before. So that would be like graduate students, so
Mm-hmm.
beyond high school, obviously. And I've also done a little work with like admissions counseling. So I did help a student, I mean, very smart, accomplished student. I didn't do that for him, but I did help him get into the Air Force Academy in Northwestern by
That's
increasing
sick.
test scores and
That's crazy.
helping with essays. So, yeah.
Okay, that's great. Plug that. Where do people find you?
I mean,
The millions of people listening to this right now.
the millions of people listening to this. I mean, you would literally just contact me directly. I mean, I generally, most people I tutor are in the Chicago area because that's where I'm based, and most people value the in-person tutoring, but I do tutor remotely as well.
Okay, fair enough. So if anyone needs help with anything academic, you know where to look. So there you go. And you said obviously law school, right? You're
Yeah.
looking for jobs, looking for law school applications, things like that. I mean, I guess not applications necessarily. You're still like preparing for the test, which
Well,
is
yes, but I
what,
mean, the applications are immediately after. I'd be applying
right?
for 2025 matriculations, so applications are going to be done sometime this fall.
Mm-hmm. How are those going?
And well, I mean, haven't really started apps because I'm doing test prep first. Just
Mm-hmm.
trying to get as high of score as I can on the LSAT to boost my chances of getting into great schools and or at least getting more scholarship money. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's just being diligent, hitting the books hard. I mean, in terms of like actual like hours per day studying, it's I'm about to hit the point where it's like the most hours I think I've ever spent consistently at a time on books.
Damn. Even more than like SAT, ACT in high school and stuff.
I did not study for those at all, basically in high school.
Really? Okay. Fair.
I did a
Well, that's
little.
better. That's less than I did. I studied pretty hard for. Well, I never took the SAT, but only the ACT. But I
Sure.
studied pretty hard for the ACT when I took it.
I don't. Yeah, I never. I mean, I took a couple practice tests. Like
Mm-hmm.
like I took my first ACT. Like I I raw dogged it, if you will.
Really?
As a freshman though, because
Right.
I mean I already had I had a very good score that most people would be pretty happy with, but I was like, this is just me at 10%. It was like my Shaggy phase. It's like, nah, I gotta go all the way.
Yeah.
And I
That's
did
sick.
eventually get a 36. So yeah.
Yeah. Of course you did. Of course.
Hey, it took several tries, but I did.
Yeah. Very. I mean, that's sick. Like, it does feel like every every other student dude had like a 36 at least in our class. It was
I
crazy.
mean, there were a lot of. I mean, that's why it's not. It's important. Don't get me wrong, and it's like something to be proud of. But like, yeah, it's not earth shaking because like there are more students
Well,
getting those scores than there are room to go to, or at least like people in that like general range, like a little off from that. There are more people in that bucket, way more than the space that there are at elite schools. So it's like not just your test scores, no matter what.
yeah, that's fair. Although I will say I was definitely one of the dumb ones. Let's say I was not
Mm,
a 36
it's
scorer.
okay.
I don't
That's
even remember what my score was. Honestly, I think it was a 34. Honestly, but so
yes.
it wasn't even a
Complete
35.
idiot.
So yeah,
Complete
there.
idiot.
See,
Only
that's.
34. Like
I
what?
mean, hey,
You
that's
got
why
a
I'm a.
few more questions wrong. Like big deal. Like okay.
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't actually matter in the large scheme of things, but
It doesn't.
um,
I've heard of some I mean, I guess I can't like prove anything, but I think I once heard a girl freshman year tell me, like not tell me, but like tell a group, like people casually, and I may have overheard it, that she got like a 26 on her ACT or something, which is not that great. And now
yeah,
she's in medical school. So I mean, like these things, I think she's at Duke Med. So it's like these things don't matter very much.
hmm yeah,
And but yeah, I mean, they do matter to a degree. I'm not, but like these things can be overcome, and there are other things. So I always try to encourage students to like not worry that much. But like, yeah, sure, of course you want to do as well as you can, without question. Why
yeah.
not?
I think the idea is more so like it's a metric that is used but it's not
Mhm.
a measure of like the actual substance that you as a person possess, like in terms of knowledge or capabilities or anything. It's just like a metric, right? And
Mhm.
the
An
unfortunate
important
world we
one,
live in,
but
yeah,
not
an
the only
important
one.
one, because the unfortunate world we live in is one where you don't have enough time to really ever measure someone holistically, right? And this is just like one of the things that people will just have to overcome. And like, if you're a bad test taker, then that's okay. You just it doesn't hamper you in the long run, right? Life is really long, so there's
It
always
is pretty long.
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, relatively, there's lots of ups and downs, and that's the fun of it. Okay, so LSATs. So it's super hard now. You got to actually like prepare for something for once in your life. How has that been?
Yeah. Um, it's been very much a lesson in a trial in my perseverance and discipline. Honestly, more so than like anything else I've been doing, and anything else I've done really. Like in college, I definitely, of course, exerted effort, but not to the degree that, in retrospect, I wanted to and should have. I think, but I was just kind of overwhelmed with how. I mean, there's college is a great like testing ground for all the things you're going to deal with in life, but still having some shelter. And I just had a lot to figure out about myself as a person at the time. And like, I mean, if I, for example, if I was myself now and I got to start with this mindset and this knowledge and everything at 18, putting that into my 18-year-old self, I would have done a lot better. I would have worked so much harder, but I coasted for a while early on in school, and college disrupted my ability to do so. And I had to work a lot on getting to a place where I was just working rigorously. So yeah, it's going okay. I similarly think that I wish I could have, should have put more time in than I have so far, but I've definitely put in a decent amount of work so far, and I'm taking the test fairly soon. So now it's like not like the next week or two or anything, but it's coming up. It's next month. So now
Mhm.
it's really putting pen to paper and just grinding, truly
Yeah,
grinding.
yeah, yeah. It is a grind. It sounds like a grind. Everyone I've talked to who's ever taken the LSAT, it's like a huge grind. I mean, anything like that, it's like it's a rough time, but it'll be worth it, right? Once you get that score, and once you actually honestly just take the test, it'll be like such a relief. Like, you're
Yeah.
just trying to get that over with. Okay, so all of this is so that you can probably become a lawyer, right? Why do you want
Yeah. I
to
mean,
practice law in the first place?
well, I'll say this much. I think that I want to do as much as I can to keep as many options open as possible. And I think law is one thing I'm very interested in and have a lot of potential in, but it's not the only thing I have a desire for. So I want to do as well as I can and see what my options are, but I'm not like necessarily going to be the person that's I need to be a lawyer right away and do this right now. So, but why I like it in general is that I've always seen law as the method by which we can reform the rules of society. And I definitely think, call me crazy, maybe it's a really controversial opinion, but society may in fact require some reforming.
You think?
So, yeah. Um, I've always cared a lot about, grand sweeping change in numerous senses, in policy or otherwise. And while my opinion on what change is has augmented a lot, which is and altered, which is why law is not like the only thing I'm interested in any longer. But I still think working on efforts that impact large swaths of people, both domestically and internationally, is a very appealing and almost righteous quest to be on. And I just feel like the power of words, more or less, and the power of logic is where I most excel and am most capable of helping improve the world if I get to a position where I have leverage to do so. I also just think that there's a lot of cool things that can be done within it as well. So for example, a lot of lawyers actually end up these days joining like sports front offices. So like the current commissioner of the NBA, actually, well, he went to Duke for undergrad, and then he went to U Chicago for his JD. Zach Kleiman, who I mentioned before, went to Duke Law School. David Stern, previous NBA commissioner, was a lawyer. There's a lot of GMs, not all of them, but plenty of them have JDs. So like, because it's dealing with contracts, it's dealing with legal agreements constantly. So there's just a lot of overlap. It's a pretty malleable profession. Most people I'm not saying that like people should go into it for the sake of not being a practicing lawyer, because most people, of course, practice law with it. I mean, that is the whole point of going through law school, because it doesn't provide you much of a specific education in the same way that like a computer science degree is like, okay, there are all these prerequisite skills that you are learning and that you accomplish. It's certainly not like going through a boot camp where it's like pass these skills. But it's mostly geared towards people performing well academically and then being ushered into generally the corporate law side of things and going to a firm. I don't have a deep desire to be at that kind of firm, but I recognize that is the general path that people take, and at least you work through it for a few years, kind of like how a lot of people from Duke just join consulting firms right away, and then you work for a few years, and then you can have a lot of different exit opportunities in business. I think that's very much a similar trajectory with law. You go through the big law process, and then after a few years, you could start a boutique firm, join a boutique firm, and you have a lot more options at your disposal. And I also think that it's okay to not want to be a practicing lawyer, like for all of life, as long as, the costs are like, if it depends on scholarships. It would honestly depend a lot, like based on how much money I would have to pay. That affects, of course, like how much I'm willing to invest in law, because like if I have to pay close to $500,000 over law school, actually law school is only 3 years, so it would be more like $300,000. So if I had to pay $300,000 for my education, I absolutely should be going and like working diligently in law to like make up for that cost. But like if based on how much scholarship I get, I don't have necessarily that same intense obligation to continue to work in law to make sure that the investment was profitable within the vein of law. Like I was speaking to a startup founder, recently, and his company is doing very well. He went to Harvard Law, but he like never has used his law degree in practice once, and he got a scholarship. So it's like, that's great. I understand that if you have the scholarship, you don't have to become a lawyer, because yes, you invested time, but you didn't invest a lot of money for a specific direction. So ultimately, I like law. I think societal challenges are fascinating, and I think even aside from them, there's just so much can be done with the degree, so many fields that law matters. I could even be like a lawyer for a large company because I definitely have a large interest in business and industry. So like being a general counsel for major corporation would be pretty interesting. Um, and even I'm very curious to see how the legal profession is changed by the presence of AI. I feel like partly as a lot of work is probably going to be taken away from junior lawyers. A lot of work is actually starting to be replaced by LLMs in the legal space, which is a bit disconcerting. But if you're a good lawyer, if you're like you go coming through these top schools, you're still most likely going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do think eventually, at least, there will be like a field of law specifically pertaining to AI that's going to come out of this as well. And I'm very fascinated by what that looks like. So I'm just intrigued. And I've had this general sense of intrigue for a long time.
Okay. So generally, you don't have a specific direction that you want to go in with the degree, but you're interested in the applications of it. And
Yeah, I'm not incredibly set in stone, at least yet, by what I would do with that. And I mean, I think that's okay. I don't think that
that's very cool. Honestly,
25-year-olds should have to know. I definitely don't think 22-year-olds who apply straight out of university should have to know. I mean, you have to weave a narrative and say specifically what you want, but there are ways to do it in a very precise way that it doesn't have to be like incredibly scripted, because it's not incredibly scripted for me.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. Okay, fair enough. I mean, I feel like the way I think about things, at least these days, is, I mean, yeah, you can, even if you have a plan for what you want to do in the future, and like some people do, even if you have a plan, it may not work out. There's so much random shit that can just happen, and it just changes things. It could change things for the better. It could change things for the worse, right? And it could change things just differently, like to be different. And I think it's cool that you're actually going in to this with no set, idea of what you want to do, because I think that's the natural way of things. Like you take things one step at a time. You're just focusing on the LSATs, and then after that, you see what happens with the applications. After that, you see what happens with your degree, and then who knows how you're feeling then, right? Like you'll be like almost in your 30s by then, right? So like who knows? Like things could change in so many ways, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be what, 29 if I start law school in 2025, and then I'd be 30 if I go to law school. And what a lot of people do, and I'm very heavily considering doing, is tacking on an MBA like after you started law school, because then you can do a dual degree program, and then you only go to school for 1 year longer. So you save a year of life. So it's like I'd be 30, but then I have a JD and an MBA, and that's like theoretically where, I mean, of course, career wise, I'd move forward, but that's like when I'm peak me almost, I guess, like fresh out of school, still young, but not definitely not old. I would not really young, but definitely not very far. Still like plenty of time away from being old and having flexibility with what I do in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. So are you thinking of moving out of Chicago then?
It all depends. I mean, like, would it be great to go to, say, Northwestern or U Chicago for law? Yeah. But if it's not one of those two schools, I would most likely be leaving. Yeah. And there's a lot of factors at play. Like, even if I got into them, depending on where else I got into and costs and other things, I'm certainly not opposed entirely to leaving. They're just, I'll see what happens. I'll figure it out.
Yeah. Would you go back? Let's say like you left Chicago. Would you go back after I don't know, like I
I
don't
don't
know when
know.
you would even consider it, but like, would
Yeah,
you?
I don't know when I don't know if or when I'd go back. Again, not opposed. I love. I mean, I didn't go back right away. I lived in New York for a little bit after graduation,
Mhm.
and I felt that I wanted to go home after a while because I want to be there for my family. That does matter to me. And but and I do think Chicago is like an awesome city for what it's worth. I think it'd be great. I think there's plenty of opportunities here. I I'm not like prescribing that I will come back, but I would be happy to be back here if that it aligns with the other things I need. But I'm not
Yeah.
like making it like a thing I have to do.
How was New York though when you were there?
I mean, partly because I mean maybe if life was differently for me, maybe I'd feel differently. But I didn't love how New York felt. It didn't feel that comfortable to me. I wasn't upset to leave. The only thing I missed, the only thing I have any regrets on potentially is that I had more friends. Weirdly enough, even if I grew up here, I wasn't close with a lot of people in high school. So I had more friends in New York because a ton of people went to New York from Duke after college. So I miss having a larger network of people to hang out with. But in this current era, I honestly think it's okay that most of my friendships are built on have some distance to them. Like I'm okay with that. As long as I have some local support here, to have some friends to hang out with, then I'm okay with a lot of my strong relationships, like being friends with you, are accompanied by distance. That's okay because I never feel like I'm out of touch with you. For instance, I never feel like I'm out of touch
Yeah.
with most people just because I'm not physically there. Yeah, but I miss it partly. I miss hanging out with people that I'm talking to, but like
Mhm.
it's okay.
Yeah.
So I just play largely by ear. But I didn't love New York. I feel it's I don't have a problem with city life. I don't have a problem with urban life, but New York particularly. Well, one, it felt like honestly felt like a pretty dirty city, at least where I lived. Um, I lived like, and I lived pretty far from like the center of New York because in New York you have to compromise something. You have to compromise convenience or you have to compromise financially. I opted for compromising convenience because so I lived far out from the center of the city. And I know if I were to ever live in New York again, I wouldn't want to do that.
Okay.
But I also just, even in New York, like even like in the center of Manhattan, it's like, I don't really know how to describe it. It just felt off putting a bit. Maybe it's because I'm not from there, and maybe Chicago is like a slower city to a degree. It's a large city, and like of course it has like areas that are similar to like downtown New York in terms of the Magnificent Mile and such in the Loop. But I don't know, it just feels homier to me. It feels more chill. It and of course I align with it culturally from being around there, so it just to me feels like a better city to live in, and it's also a lot cheaper.
Somehow, okay. Well, yeah, that's I could 100% believe that, but it feels like somehow, whenever I visit New York, for example, it's like amazing, right? But I only am there for like what, like 2 days, 3 days at a time, usually. Um, and it's just like maybe a different type of experience. Whereas, I feel like anyone I talk to who's lived in New York is like, it's not as great as you might think as someone who just visits New York. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting that everyone's consistent on that perspective. Because like from the outside, it looks lit, right? But
It seems
I,
lit. But for one, honestly, I don't care that much about pursuing lit. I would rather pursue peace. I'd
Hmm.
rather pursue, you know, inner happiness. I think New York is a city very much driven by materialism and external happiness. And I mean, that's like what most things are, but I think New York is like the hyper example of that.
Well, okay, so give me an example then. What do you
I know, I
like?
just think it's like the center of American capitalism. And
Okay.
that is what all those things are associated with. And I think it's good to achieve things. I mean, I definitely think that there's a lot of things about like working hard and meritocracy and like trying to achieve new heights that is important. But like, I just don't think that that's exactly what my personal profile, if you will, aligns with completely. I'd rather things be a bit more laid back, and I still work hard, but I don't need to be in that hustle bustle culture at all times. I think it's a great place to meet people. I think it's a great place to visit. But and if again, maybe if I lived in like downtown Manhattan, I'd feel differently about things, perhaps, because maybe I'd get exposure to it. But I definitely think that living on the outskirts of that wasn't great.
Okay. That's a fair perspective. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what the future holds for me either, you know, so like we'll see. I've told you about thinking about potentially looking at some other places or something, but I'm not sure. Like the more I'm here, the more content I am here, you know, because like I don't know what there is to even complain about, you know, like this is like, I mean, I don't know, like I feel like North Carolina is still beautiful, you know, it's just as beautiful as it always has been. So I don't know, like maybe as I get older, I'm more like, yeah, I mean, maybe I also want the peace and like quiet and like the slow life, you know. I kind of grew up with it, so maybe it's just like been instilled into me from a young age.
Yeah, it's definitely possible.
Okay, but yeah, I guess lots to look forward to, I guess, with you for the future. I mean,
I certainly like to think so. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, a lot. A lot. A really important time, right? We'll see. Hopefully, everything works out. Hopefully, the grind keeps going well. Um, obviously, I'm gonna see how things go from my end, and we'll see. Maybe you'll hop back on a pod sometime and give us the
Sure.
update when you get into law school and everything. That'll be cool.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Okay. But any last words for the people?
Mm, just in every step of the way, feel free to live your best life and don't be afraid of it being different from what other people think should be your best life.
Okay, I like it. I have no comments to elaborate. I think that's the perfect ending. So we'll leave it off with that. Um, Alex Frumkin, thank you for being on the first episode of this new podcast. Name TBD. We'll figure it out.
Well, thank you very much for having me on this new podcast, Zoltaba co founder Anish Kotu.
We started informal, but we end official. That's the way to do things. We do it
That
the
is
opposite
precisely how
here.
things must be done.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, but yeah, take care, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, see you, man.
This podcast is an ego play. My ego play, in a way, as the hopeful resident host of it for as long as we run it. It's a way for me to find expression, I guess. Become popular, become likable, It's a way to live on, in a way that only art allows me to. And art, right, lives far beyond humans do. That's why we're drawn to it. It's an expression of the exact moment in time in which it was created. And that's why writers hate their past writings. That's why most art becomes immediately outdated to mainstream society. And it's only the good art that we remember. It's the art that lives on because it is as applicable to our condition now as it was when it was created. Art is also ubiquitous now. Writing is art, and writing is everywhere. Social media is art, and social media is everywhere. Podcasts are art, and podcasts are everywhere. We've just been flooded with information everywhere we look now. So it gets hard to find art that sticks, and even harder to make art that sticks. But that's not what this podcast is about to me. It's an ego play for sure, but it's not something I imagine will live on like past art might have had the chance to. The goal for me personally is simply to be able to have a voice, some kind of influence, and maybe just have a chance to get people to understand my perspective. Just as I hope everyone gets to understand these guest perspectives. And I think everyone's perspectives are always valid. It's just about finding out what makes them tick and why they do what they do. The most amazing part of podcasting for me is the people I get to meet. I love the idea of Sonder. This idea that everyone around you, strangers, friends, family alike, all have a very full life in their own right and are just as conscious as you are. To me, the goal of this podcast is to find what it is that makes some of these people at Zoltaba valid. Because everyone is. You just have to find the reason. So hopefully, maybe, you'll find some of yourself in these guests. And maybe that is what'll make it worth it.